Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another tutorial. In this one I'm teaching you how to create a collage, a photo collage using PHP. So it's going to look something like this, and you can merge photos into one photo like this one here using PHP. So all you do is you hit browse to capture images that you want. So you can select a list of images. This one supports WebP images, JPEGs, all kinds of images. So if you select like, let's say 3 images here, let me open that up. You specify the row height, what height you want for each row preferably. It's going to try to stick to that, but if not, it will just make sure the images fit properly. So in this situation, if I put it at 400 and the padding is the space between images, 10 pixels, and I hit generate, it's going to give me a collage, something like this. Look at that. Okay. If I add, let's say, 5 images, for example, let me add these. So you can add PNG, WebP, and JPEG, of course. And if I generate with this one, let's see what we get. And this is what we get. So that's our collage over there. All right, guys. So let's get started. So to start with, let's download Bootstrap to use for our UI. You don't need Bootstrap, but it just makes things look a little bit better. So once you get that, make sure also you have PHP running on your system, and I do that using XAMPP. So you can download XAMPP and then open the control panel, and then just make sure that Apache is running. We don't need MySQL, just Apache will do. So just start that service. Okay, so once we have those things, create a folder somewhere on your drive. So I created mine inside my local drive H, inside a folder here. So I'm just going to drag and drop my folder into the text editor I'm going to be using, which is Sublime Text. Now, of course, you can use any text editor of your choice. Now let's extract this Bootstrap file. We just really need one file from this. So I'm going to go inside here, the CSS folder, and I just want the bootstrap.min.css. So I'm going to go back in here and just paste it there. Why is it not pasting? Okay, there we go. Now I can delete the rest of this because I don't need it. I made a copy of this, so I can just delete that. Okay, so that's just a CSS file for the look. Now I'm going to drag and drop my folder into my text editor. Oops. Why is my mouse terrible like this? All right, so I'm going to drag and drop. There we go. So now I want to create a new file. So new file, just right click in that folder, new file, and let's save that file. This is going to be our index page. So that is index.php. Let's save that. And then let's put some normal HTML tags. And this one is, let's say, PHP photo gallery or photo collage. Now, of course, you can name this anything you prefer. So let me copy that down here into the body and paste, but change title to maybe H2 tag, something like that. All right, so let's save that. We just want to see something in the browser. So what I'm going to do now is go to my same folder, open it, where there's my index.php file now. I'm going to open my command line. You should have PHP running on your system. You can check that by doing PHP dash capital V. Actually, it's small letter v. But if you see any of this like this, except for the part that says command unknown, then everything is well installed. So you just want to start PHP's internal server that comes with PHP. So you do that by saying php-s localhost, and then you give it a port number of your choice. Now 80 is the default port number, so you can use any other port number that you want. Instead, let's just use 100, like so. So like that, our server has started. Do not close this window, just minimize it. Otherwise, once you close it, the server is no longer running. Now it's showing us that the server is running at this URL. So let's just copy that URL into our browser. So open a new tab and let's load that up. You should see something like that. Okay, so PHP Collage. Let me use H1 actually. That H2 seems a little bit too small. Okay, so now let's add some Bootstrap content here. First of all, I'm going to add a div just for the UI. This is the close that div like that. Let's import the CSS file. So I'm going to use the link tag to do that, and the file is, since it's not in any folder, it's bootstrap.min.css like that. And just by adding that, we can now start to add classes that belong to that guy. So here I'm just going to say container, something like that. Okay, so if I now refresh, I should see that the font has changed, etc, etc. Okay, so let me center stuff. Why did this? I don't know what container does. So let me remove that. What I'm gonna do instead is, actually I don't need any of this. What I need is to copy. You can go to the Bootstrap website to speed things along and just copy what is already there by going to the docs here. So it's getbootstrap.com. You go to the docs, and then you can go to form controls here. So we are on forms and input group. So I can just go through this stuff that's here and copy what I want. So the first thing I need is somewhere to select images, and this looks like these are select drop-down lists. I just want to see where they styled an image input somewhere here. Multiple add-ons, inputs. Usually it's in input group here. So let me see here for a second. Looking for the image input, and there it is, I think. Wait, these are selects. I was already here. Okay, there we go. File input right here. So when it shows you this, below whatever it's showing you, there's some code here that we can just copy. So I want the very first one here. I'm just gonna copy that and do copy and bring it here and paste. So just like that, I'm gonna use these styles on my system. So what I want here is a class called mxauto, which centers the div in the center. And then I want to limit its width. I'm just going to say column medium, and then I'll say something like maybe 8. So Bootstrap has 12 columns, and if you say 8 columns, that's less than the full amount. And then mxauto is going to make sure that we center the div, and then I can add a border for the div if I want to, or a shadow instead, depending on what you like, by just doing that. And then I can add some padding within, like so, all around. So let's see how that looks. And also maybe centering the text would help. And as you can see, this is what we have so far. Let me enlarge it to full, and there we go. So let me actually lower this back to H2, but what I'm going to do is put this inside. Let's add a class, padding 2 as well, and then BG color is going to be primary, which is blue, and then the text color is going to be white, and then we need to center the text. So there we go. And yeah, so I have that. And let me actually maybe remove this padding here so that this one goes to the full size. But then I can add another div for the actual content here that I can add some padding to. So class padding maybe 3 like that, and then close that div. So this is going to be like this. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Refresh, and there we go. So PHP photo collage, and then this is the selector for the so this is an input group here, and there's a label called upload. We can just say click, say select images. Now this is the input thing here. We want it to be able to select multiple files, so I'm going to put the multiple attribute there, and then I want to tell it what kind of files to accept, which are images. So I'm just going to say image slash. Now if I wanted to select only JPEG, I'll just do that, or PNG images, but instead I'll put a star to say all image types are allowed, like that. Or you could say JPEG and then put a pipe and then say or image slash PNG. Maybe that's the limit that you want. JPEG here is actually like so, image JPEG, image PNG. All right, so let's see how that works. So if I now refresh, it'll say select images. I can click browse, and it didn't recognize my what I was trying to do here. Maybe I need a comma instead of the pipe. So let's refresh again. Let me hit browse, and yep, that actually worked. So now you can see that all supported types is JPEG and PNG over here. Okay, good. And since we selected the multiple attribute, we are able to select multiple files here, which is great. So let's come back here. Now the settings we're going to need in here are just a few. So let me go back to Bootstrap website here. I just want the input groups again. I just go to the very top here, and that's where I find the which one is this? This one. So there are two things we're going to be using this for. So this second one is the one I want. So I'm going to go down here and select it. It's the one with the username in it. Wait. Not the $sign. So it's way down here with the @ there. So it's this one. So I'm going to grab this and copy and paste here. Paste. Okay, so there we go. So now I'm going to duplicate the span here that has the text so that I have two of these. Now the things I want is, first of all, the target height of each image. Those are the things we can select, and then the padding. So I'm going to do padding over here, and then I'll duplicate Ctrl+Shift+D, move it to the top, Ctrl+Shift arrow key, and this one is the target height, row height. Okay, so we are going to be suggesting the row height here to the user, and how much padding, like space in between images. So instead of the placeholder here being no, that's fine. Let me remove these placeholders. They're not going to be very useful since these are actual numbers. I'm going to remove that as well just to reduce the clutter. Let me do the same thing here. Let's remove this guy. So instead, I'm just going to add a value over here. So maybe the value is 5 as a default, and the minimum should be 0. Yeah. just as well here I can put value. Maybe the default value will be something like 400, and then the minimum value, maybe we can say 50, and then we don't really need to put max. And then we should change the type from text to number, and here as well, number. Right, so let's get back to see what we've done. Okay, there we go, which is awesome. This is outside the padded thing, is it? Because margin bottom is 3, which is correct. But why is it? Oh yeah, it's outside this padded area. So let me move this and move this. Like so. Okay. Let's see that. We shouldn't spend too much time on the UI. We should get to business. Okay, so these are the only params we need. You select your images, the targeted row height, and how much padding, and then we should have our image down here. So let me go down here to put our image. So I'm going to put a div over here and a class. What do I put here? Maybe padding, some little padding here, and I can add a border and then make that border rounded. And then inside here, I'll put my image tag. The source will be just collage.jpg. And then we're going to put a question mark here to put a query string, because what happens is if you keep the browser is good at caching images. So if I keep recreating the image and it has exactly the same name, it's going to keep it cached. So you will think that it didn't work. So instead, we want to put a random number at the end there just to fool the browser into thinking this is a different version of the image, which normally it will be. So here I'm just going to put some PHP tags so that we echo the current time in seconds since 1970, and you can do that with the function time. All right, and let me add a class to this image, just image fluid, just to make it fit the width of the what's happening here. So let's see how that looks. Let me text center this as well. I'm going to do text center like that so that the image can be pushed to the center, and I think that would do. But what we can do instead is to check if the image exists and only show that when the image is in play. So I'm just going to say if file exists. That's how you check for a file. That's collage.jpg. If that file exists, then show this part, otherwise do not. So let's end that if statement like so. Alrighty then, so this is all good. Now let's put a button somewhere here. So I'm just going to put a button and say generate collage. Let me add some classes here. Of course, the button class and the button primary. And what else? Now it's up to you. You can make it large or small. Now, since this is this should be a form actually, so let me just wrap this inside a form. Now the method is post, of course, and then we need an encoding type since we are uploading images. So it's usually called multi-part slash form data, I think, something like that. All right, so the form starts there and ends here after this, right? So let me let me just end that with that form thingy like so. Okay, let's type that in and let's check it out. So I'm gonna refresh. Okay, so generate collage with that. If you want to save space, you can just put that button here. So maybe let's do that. So I'm gonna grab this button and just make it part of the input thingy here, and hopefully it will fit in very well there. Okay, that's much better. So generate collage. Now down here will be the image. So let's now create the file. Excuse me. Let's create the file that will do the generating. So new file, I'm gonna call it generate. generate.php. All right, guys. Oh, it's flu season over here. All right, so what I need to do is just check if something was posted, and that's it. So let's see our post. The items that will be posted, sorry, are going to be in the files variable here. So let me just do this. Let me just print this out so that we can see. So we're going to print readable on that one, and I'm just going to use some pre-tags so that it's nice and clean when I view that. And let's make sure our action here, form action, is sending us to that page. So generate.php, like so. Okay, cool. So let's see what we get. If I upload some images, I'm just gonna refresh. Actually, I didn't give these guys names. So let's go to the input. We need names for these to be valid. So the name for this one is images. And then let's go to the input for this number here. This one, the name is target. What should be this one? Target height. And this one name is going to be padding. Yeah. All right. So those are the three things we need. Let me refresh the page. And let me... So once you click on generate, this is what you will see. Images with an array of images. Now, sometimes this one will be empty, but actually it shouldn't look like this. This is how it should look when you can only upload one image at a time. So I'm going to put curly braces like this to make sure that we save it as an array, right? So let me go back here for a sec, refresh, and let's generate again. Didn't seem to change much. Okay, let me browse for some files. Let me select a few here. Maybe these 4 over here. Let me generate. Okay, so images is like this. This is not how it should be. Name images. What have I missed here? Okay, so everything seems fine. So why is it not doing its thing? Okay, let's try again. I'm going to, maybe I'm not refreshing the page properly. Let me, there we go. So this is what I was looking for. This is how it should look instead. Okay, so let's go back. Let me browse here. I think it wasn't refreshing the page properly. Let me just get 2 images so that it's easier to see and generate. Okay, so there we go. So this is what you get. This is the array you get. It's got an array called images because that's what we named it. And then there is the file names. And then there is the full paths of the files. And then the file types over here. and then the file temp name. Now we don't need any of the other stuff. All we need is the file types and the file temp name, because the temp name is a temp directory where the file is actually sent, and so this is the actual path to the files themselves. So I'm going to grab temp name here and types so that we make sure that we are not dealing with files that are not of the type that we want. So first of all, let's start with just a second here. So like before I go on, I didn't mention that I already wrote this code, because sometimes this code gets very complex. So I'm just going to copy this and explain the code line by line. So let me paste that. Okay, and save. Okay, so I'm going to make a few changes while I'm explaining here, because I just realized we can do better here. Okay, so to start with, we have the target height, which we get from our post variable, because only images go in the files variable. So the post variable contains all the other inputs. So like target height, which is this one we've created here, we've given it a name, target height, and then there's padding. So those are the two we are gathering here. Now we are using this function called max, because what max does is there's two functions, there's min and then there's max. So max just gets the maximum value from an array, from a list of items. So what we normally use this for is just to make sure we have like a default value. So for example, target height, if the user puts a 0 in there, we shouldn't allow that. We should allow like a minimum value of 50. So if the user supplies 0, it's going to be like this. It's going to be max and then 50 and then 0. So because the max function will give you the maximum value, it's going to return a 50. But if the user, say, puts a 200, then it's going to return that 200. So it's just a safety way to make sure that we have a base default value. Now max can be, you can add several values to this, and then it will just give you the maximum value of them all. So here we're just saying get the target height for the row. The default should be, let's put 400 there. And then the minimum is 50. Same with padding, the minimum is 0, but otherwise we are grabbing this here. Now we are wrapping this with the int thing here, like so, to just make sure that we cast it as an integer no matter what. So if this does not exist, we'll put a value of 400, but then still, which makes the max thing redundant here kinda, but it's fine. And then we have a maximum width of the image itself. So the generated image will be 1200 pixels max. So you can edit this depending on what you want. Now just keep in mind that the bigger the image, the more memory you're going to use, especially if the user uploads a lot of images. So just keep that in mind. There should be a memory limit, because these images do take up quite a bit of memory when they're running. Okay. So then the other thing is, let's see here, maximum width of the canvas itself. Then we get the files. So the files, as we saw, are inside the images array, and then there's that temp name memory location, which is this one right here, which contains the list of files. So that becomes an array of file names. And then we're going to create this images array here. So we create that array. That's where we're going to store each image and its attributes. Okay, so we're going to loop through that files thing. In our case, we have 2 files, so this is going to happen twice. And then if the file does not actually exist, we just skip over it. We just ignore it. But if the file exists, we do image create from string. Now we're going to change this function a little bit in a moment, because This will generate some errors if the file is not really an image. And this is why there's this @ symbol here to hide any errors that happen. So what that symbol means is that if any errors occur during this line, just ignore them and don't show them at all. But this is not a good way to do things, so we're going to change this in a moment. This was just for testing. And then file get contents file. So we're just grabbing the file from the contents of the file or the contents of that image file, and then putting it in image create from string. Now there are other functions like image create true color or image create from JPEG, which we should be using instead, or image create from PNG, depending on which image we have. That's why we have to check what image type we have. Okay, so once we create an image resource of that image, if the image was not created for some reason, maybe there was an error here that we suppressed, we ignore this and just continue looping. We don't go to this part here. Okay, but if everything went well, there's this function called images X and images Y. These will gather the image width and the image height of this current image. And then there is the issue of scaled width here. Okay, because we know what the target height of our image is. We know what we are targeting because the user gave us that information in the input here. So the target height is given. That's kind of like a suggestion, right? Because we're going to adjust the height to fit the image, the images finally. So this is just like a suggested height, which is target height. Now, if I divide the target height divided by the actual height of our image, so maybe our image is like 1,000 pixels, but the target height that we want is 500 pixels. So there's a ratio between the original and what we are scaling it down to. So if we divide those two, that gives us the ratio of the change or the amount of change between original and target. And once we get that, we multiply with the width of the image to get the scaled width. The reason we're doing this is we want to keep the aspect ratio of the image intact. So we're just saying if the height becomes 500 pixels, what should the width become? So we multiply by the ratio there and we get that width here. And so once we are done with that, we add it to the image array and we add the image resource, which is it takes up quite a bit of memory here, this image resource. So you should always delete these image resources immediately after using them. The moment they become not useful, you delete them. And so here we have the original width, which is the original width of the image, and the scaled width and the height are here. So we store those inside the images thingy for all the images. And once we're done with that, we start arranging the rows here. Because now depending on the number of images, we're going to have a few rows that will come up. So for example, if we have 4 images and then the required height of the image is such that only 2 images can fit on a row, then it means we're going to have 2 rows. So this is the part where we determine how many rows we ought to have depending on the parameters that we're given. So here we're going to have an array, rows, empty array, and then current row, empty array. Okay, and then the current row width, we set that to 0 because we want to start calculating. So what we're doing here essentially when we are looping again through those images is we're trying to shove those images into one row. So we check to see what the width is, or the total width is, of the images we've added in that row. If at some point it exceeds the actual image width or the actual canvas width, let me say that, then we move that image to the next row. That's really what we are doing on this loop here. So let me explain the loop a little bit better. So our current row right now is empty, but then we add an image. So then we check to see, we say the current row width is equal to the image that we've just added, because we are using the scaled version of it, the width that we've scaled, and then we add a bit of padding there. Okay, so we add a little bit of padding, whatever that space is between images. So each image is going to have some of that padding. And if it turns out that the current row, because of what we've added, is greater than the maximum width or is equal to, then our row is done. Okay, so if at some point we exceed, then that row is done. So we add this current row to the list of rows, and then we empty it, and then we set that to 0 again, because we have to start again on the next row, but we have to start from the beginning to see how many images again we can shove in there. So once we are done up to this point, we're going to have an array here of rows, and I can show you what that looks like. So let me just tell it to die at this point, and let me go back here. Now, because we have these images here, we should destroy those images. And what I'm going to do is I will not create a resource here. What I will do is just say something like, because I don't want to be creating all this memory, let me just say image is equal to 1, something like that, just so it's equal to something, but we don't actually create an image resource. So at this point, let me go down here just so I can show you the information in here, and I'm going to echo some pre-tags, of course, so that it looks nicer. And then, oh wait, do I have pre-tags already? No, I don't. And then over here, we're going to print the images array. All right, so let's see what that will give us. So I'll refresh again, and there are 2 images in there. So let me resend this. Okay, so argument 1 image must be of type GDI image int given. Okay, so that's on line 16. So this error is only coming because I didn't create the image resource. Let's see, line 16. Oh, okay, there we go. So I guess I have to create the image resources. Okay, no problem. Oops. What am I doing? What am I doing? I need to just remove this and then remove that. Okay, so since we are creating those image resources, we should just destroy them before we die here. So I'm just gonna do image destroy and img like that. So I'm gonna create a small loop here. I don't want to run out of RAM here. Okay, and then img. And then let's put image destroy in there. It's going to be inside that image img. Images, it's actually source. Yeah, source. Like that. Okay, great. So let's see what we get. Let me refresh, resend. Okay, so there we go. So as you can see, this is the array we got. There's the source GD image, and then the original width, and then these are the scaled down versions of things. So scaled height, we've reduced it from 1000 to 600, and then this 600 to 400. This maintains the ratio. But look at this, this is a floating point number, so we may have to cast them as integers, which is one thing I actually forgot to mention at the top here. This is why we do this int thing here. We are casting it as an integer. Even though somebody sent a string, we're just going to say convert that into an integer. That's why we put those ints there. So we're going to have to do that when creating these images later, because these are floating point numbers. You can't have like 0.7 pixels That doesn't work at all. So this is what we get in there for those two images, which is cool. And let me remove everything apart from the... that's fine as well. I can remove that. So at the very end of looping and adding to the rows here, we only go through this part if we exceed a particular row, and then we have to move to the next row. And this is the only time we add to the actual array that we're going to be using here. So which means if there's an image at the very end, let's say there are 5 images. Each row has 2 images, so there's going to be 3 rows, but the third row is going to have like 1 image left, which means it won't overflow. If we don't do this part, we're going to leave that image out. So we're just checking if current row is not empty, meaning there's an extra image on the final row. Let's just add it to another row so that we have 1 extra row with just 1 image. Okay, so at this point we have all the rows and how many images are in each row. So the next thing we do now is to calculate the canvas height. Okay, so now we want to know what the height will be. We already know the width of the canvas. So we've tried to fit all the images in there, but what I don't want is to crop the images at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is try to calculate what the height of the canvas should be for all the images to fit properly. So since there's going to be a white space at the very top of the images, we start with the total height. We just start with that padding. So that padding represents the white backgrounds around the images. So to start with, because we're looking at just the height of the images will have this padding there. And then we're going to have scaling factors here. So let me explain this a little bit in more detail. Let's do paint here. So forgive me if these drawings will look insane because my mouse is, I think the batteries are low in the mouse, so it's fighting me a little bit. So what we've done is this. Let's say we have like, let's say we have 4 images, or yes, 1, 2, 3, or 5 images, like 4 and 5, right? Now we have a limited amount of space where we want these images to fit. So for example, this is my canvas. I know the width of the canvas is this one up to here. So the thing is, we know what the row height is supposed to be. Actually, what we're doing is we tried to grab this image, we add it to the row here. That's what we did. And then we check if it exceeds the width, but it doesn't. So we grab another image and put it here as well. But then we check, does it exceed the width? And then we see, okay, it does not. But then we try to grab a third image and put it here. And then now this exceeds, because as you can see, this is much longer than just having these 2 here. Okay, so what we end up having is, so this will be moved to the next line. So what we end up having is images like this. So there's an image here, and then maybe another image here. It could be much wider. But then because if we try to add a third one, let me put this like so. If we try to add a third image, why does it resize? Okay, it's going to be like this. So this will exceed, and we don't want that. So say, nope, let's put that on the next line, like so. Okay, and then we keep doing that again. We try and add, maybe this will fit a few more images, who knows, but maybe this will reach here. And then we try to add another one and it exceeds, and we're like, okay, no, let's go to the last column here, and then we're going to have something like this. But the problem is these images are not fitting the proper width of the canvas, because the canvas width ends here. Now we have slightly a bit of a problem here, because we'll have this empty space over at this side if we just printed it like this. So all this will be empty space. So what we need to do now is scale these images once more, because we know at least they are less than the width of this. So we need now to scale them a bit to fit actually on each row. So we're doing scale to fit here, and even the last image here will be scaled completely to fit up to here. Now, doing that while maintaining the ratio means the image now is going to become this big, like so, which means now we need to even adjust the height of the canvas as well. Okay, so this is the process that we need to do now. So these are the scaling factors that we'll put in here. How much, what number are we going to multiply each image over there in order to get to this point at the end here for it to fit, while taking into consideration the padding around each image. So we should add that, factor that in. So what we do is we get the raw image width and then multiply that, see, add those together, and then we see where they end. And then once we add those together, excuse me guys, we look at the maximum width and then we say, okay, how much do you need to multiply this image width we have in order to make it to the very end here? But then we have to, in that calculation of the width, we have to remove the padding values because those are additive. So we remove those. So instead it's going to be like up to here. This is reserved for the padding. Even though it's on one side, of course, we're going to share it among in between the images. But just for the sake of calculation, we just put it on one side and then we say, okay, how much do we need to multiply to get to this point and fill up with those images? So that's what we are doing here. And the final one, we'll do the same thing, but just for one image. Okay. So let me explain the code here a little bit. So we are looping through each row, and each row contains a few images in there. So it's an array of arrays. So the row width here is the total added width of each image currently without the padding. So how we achieve that is we use array sum. And that's because we created this function here called array map. What it does is it loops through an array. So that's array map here, and then there's this array here called row, because this row contains two or more images that are part of that row. So in each of those images, array map takes in a function. This is the function right here. So it may look a little bit confusing, but what the function is, we're using the fn function type. That's something that was added to PHP in, I think, 7.4, where you can, instead of having a function like, let me just say var, and then you say var here, like so. So this is a valid function. This is equal to if you had an actual function that is like this, and then you have a variable here, and then curly braces, and then you say return, and then var. So this is equivalent to this here. Okay. The advantage of using this is you can use it as a one-liner, and you don't have to use the return keyword, which is good. And also sometimes when you use an anonymous function like this, if you have a variable that you want to use that's from the outside, because this function is really isolated from the outside environment, you would have to do something like use another variable called myvar, something like that. If, for example, there is a variable like total height that I wanted to use within this function, within this anonymous function, I would have to do it like this and put the total height over here. But that's not the case with this new type of anonymous function. It automatically gets those, and then you don't have to type the return keyword. In short, it just makes things easier. It's much shorter, much less code. So this is the function over here up to this point. That's the function. So the function just loops through every image and just looks at the scaled width. This I variable here is the images, every item through the loop. And then we get that I and look at, which is just image. We could have named this image. And then scaled width minus the padding. So I'm removing the padding to just get the raw width of each image. And then the array that is returned by array map, we sum it up. So array sum just gets all the items in an array and add them together. Ideally, they should be numbers, and then give you the overall result. So that's the raw width. And then we calculate the scaling factor. This is simple because we look at the maximum width of our canvas minus the padding. Now, padding here is special because we are padding on both sides of the image. So let me show you how much padding we should account for. So for example, if a row has 2 images, it means the padding, let's say there's 5 pixels of padding. There's going to be padding here on the very left, that's 1. And then there's going to be 5 pixels here, that's 2. And then there's going to be 5 pixels here, that's 3. So when the images are 2, the padding is times 3. And when the image is 1, the padding is times 2 because it's this side and this side. So it's always the number of images in that row plus 1. So this is why it's like this. We count the number of items in the row, which is the number of images, and then we add 1 to it. So then we multiply that resulting value by the padding. That gives us the total width of that padding on that row. And then once we remove that from the maximum width, we can use the total value of this and divide it by the row width. Now this row width is the image's current width right now. If you add all the images together, the width of all those images, we divide those two. That gives us the ratio of where we are but where we want to go. Like we're at 500 pixels, but the canvas is 800 pixels. So how much do we need to multiply that 500 to get to the 800? So that's the scaling factor. Once we get that scaling factor, we save it in the scaling factors here. So we know that the item number 1 or item 0 in this array will scale at this factor. So that's the first image. That's how much it will scale. And then here, we just want to calculate the height. So I want to calculate the heights of the images in this current row and then add it to total height, because we're going to start with total height as just that padding part. So let me go down here. Let me explain this with the image here. So what we're doing is we want to know the height of the image, right? The canvas. So first of all, we just say, okay, for now we know that there's padding at the very top here. So let's just start with that. So the current height is equal to padding, okay, which is right there. And then when we add these images and we scale them to fit to this point that we want, let's check what the actual heights have become now, because we are keeping the aspect ratio intact. And once we know that height, we just add it to the current height, which was just the padding, and then we add it to this one. So we are at this point, we know, okay, at least for us to fit one row, the height will have to be somewhere here. Okay, but then there are more rows, so we'll keep adding until we get to the very end here, and we'll know the final result of the height. So this one computes the actual new height of the image. So all we are doing is grabbing one image from the row list, just the first one, to avoid looping through them, and because they all have the same height. So just calculating one is enough. So we look at the scale height, we remove its padding so that we get the actual height, and then we multiply it by the scale factor. We don't want to multiply the padding as well, because otherwise when the images are bigger, the padding will increase as well. We don't want that. That's why we're subtracting it from the height before we multiply with the scale factor. And then once we multiply the scale factor, we add that to the total height, but then we add a padding as well to that, because there should be spaces between these images. So after multiplying the height, we add the padding. So we do this repeatedly with all the rows, and by the end of it, we will have a new total height. And since we already know the width, we can now create our canvas. So we generate the canvas using image create true color. This is how you create a true color image with GD library. Now, I should also mention that we are using GD library. These functions are part of the GD library. This image create true color, image allocate, image fill, all these. So your GD library must be activated in your PHP. So you can know that by going to your PHP folder, wherever you installed PHP, and getting the php.ini file. If you're using XAMPP, you can just click on config here, and the PHP ini file will open like this. Now, if you happen to go to your PHP folder and you don't find the php.ini file, you can just create a new one. It's not really that much of a big deal. What I'm looking for are extensions. Extension is equal to, that's what I'm looking for. So it's saying it can't find that. I'm missing an N there for when searching. Okay, so extension module there. Let's keep going. Extension path. There's a list of all extensions, which is right here. So sometimes you find that some extensions have a semicolon at the beginning, which means they are commented out. They are not being used. So this one is active, just like this one, and extension GD is active as well. So if you don't have the php.ini file, you can just add this line there and it's gonna work. But if you have this, just make sure the semicolon is removed at the beginning here for extension GD. Now, if you just added that file, a new file, and added this line, you may need to also specify the extension path. So that's a, I don't know where that is, somewhere here. So you can just find, oh no, you can't find it because you don't have this file. Yeah, so you need to put this extension dir as well to specify where your extensions are. My extensions are inside this folder, so I can just actually copy this and go to my thing here and just paste that. You will see all the PHP extensions are in here. So you can see I'm inside XAMPP PHP. That's where the PHP folder is, and all these are extensions, and there is extension GD somewhere here. Okay, so if you installed PHP on your own and in a different folder, just look for this path and put that there as well. Right, so once you're done, save this file and restart your server, because you need to restart in order for it to work. Okay, so image create true color. Now, if for some reason GD library is not installed on your computer, you will get an error saying unknown function image create true color. Once you see that, then you know GD is not installed. Anywho, this is how you create a new image, true color. We put our width and height. Okay, great. Now, this is how you allocate a color. We just want to fill the background with white, because normally it's black. So white is going to be created by saying image allocate, color allocate, and that's the, you put the image where you are allocating that color, which is the canvas, and then the RGB of that color, and then image fill just floods the canvas with that color. You specify the coordinates, the XY coordinates, and what color you want to put. Okay, and then finally here, this is calculation for, this is where we place the images now. So we loop through the rows and loop through each image in that row. And then here we are just calculating the new width by using those scale factors here, right? So int val just makes sure that we don't have any decimal points because we can't use those in pixels when creating an image. So what we are doing here now is resizing each image individually. So this is the resized image. We create it with the image create true color. Then we put the new width and height. And then image copy resampled just pastes that image onto another one. Now the advantage of image copy resampled is that you can resize the image while you are copying it. So the original is much bigger than where we are copying. So you provide the resized image. Okay. So this image we created, the resized version, it's a smaller image. And then we are copying from the original image that the image resource. Because original images could be like 3000 pixels by 2000 pixels. So we're just grabbing that original image and putting it on the resized canvas, a very small canvas. And then we're going to use those small canvases to paste on the overall canvas. So once we make that resized version here, and these are the coordinates, new width, new height, the original width and the original height. These are just X and Y values of the original types. So you can do this. You can say image copy resampled. This one with brackets, and then it will give you all the params you should add: the destination image, the source image, the destination X, destination Y, and the source X, and so on. So those are just coordinates of where you're getting this information. So once we do that, now we do an image copy. So we grab the resized image and paste it on the canvas. That's all we are doing here, and supplying the relevant coordinates. And then we destroy the resized image because we don't need it now. We've pasted it on the canvas. We don't need it anymore. And then we destroy also the source image. So both these images that were involved in this, the resized version and the source image, we don't need them anymore. We can destroy them immediately. And then here we continue adding to the x variable, because x is equal to the amount of padding. So which means from the top, let's say it's 5 pixels, we are pasting 5 pixels after the top of the canvas. So then we just add the actually X is left and right, so we are pasting 5 pixels from the edge, and then we add the new width that we've created plus the padding, and then which means next time that's where we are beginning to paste from, which is the same with the Y. We are starting with some padding at the top here, and then with each image we add some padding plus the height of the previous image, so that we keep going down, 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 and so on. And then eventually we say image JPEG, which is how you save the image. We are saving it. This is the image we are saving, the canvas, the whole canvas, after we are done with all that, and we give it a file name. And this is the quality right here. The maximum is 100. The default I think is like 80 or 75, I'm not sure, but you can adjust the quality here in case you see your image is being pixelated. You can adjust the quality here, but 90 is pretty good, because sometimes putting it at 100 you see no visual difference, but the file size becomes too much. So that's up to you. And then once we save it, there's no need to keeping it in memory. We destroy it, and then we redirect back to our login page. Now we're gonna have a collage.jpg image already there. Okay, so this is how it is done. So hopefully the explanation was good enough. That way you know every piece of the code. In case you need to change something, maybe you can make adjustments. So I would advise you to go through this and just change a few things around and see what changes. It's more intuitive that way. When you mess around with the code, just keep a copy of it, then mess around with it, and then see what changes when you adjust things. That's how you learn to code. You can't really break anything here, or even if you break it, you can always put it back. Right, so let's see what this will give us. So let's go back to our index page and try to create our first collage. So I'm going to click on the browse here, and let me select some images. There's some images I have here. They're all different widths and heights. So this is 4 images. Let's see how that does. 400 pixels for the suggested row height and 5 pixels for padding. So let's generate this and see what happens. And there we go. So we have our collage there, very nicely done. As you can see, the images are well set down here. So let's increase the padding to, let's say, 20. Let me grab a few different images here. Let's see. I'm gonna grab these 4. Let me make them 5 so that we see how it handles that. Let me generate. Yep. Okay, so there we go. You can see the padding. Oh, these values don't stay, right? But you can see the padding is now bigger, and these are the images, and this is the collage that was generated. So as you can see, the final image here is very large because when we put it on full width, that's how far it goes. Alrighty guys, so the code obviously is in the link in the description so that you can play around with it and see what you come up with. Let me put 30 as padding. Let me put 300 as the height. Let's see what we get with those settings just to test. And let me grab these images over here, and maybe just 4 images. Let's see. Let's generate. Okay, so there you go. A lot of padding between these, but it works extremely well. And you can see they all fit on one line because of the height that we had put of 3. Now, if you want to keep these values, of course, you can just try to echo them inside these. Let's see, value here. So I can just echo them and say inside the post variable. What's that? This one is target height. Echo that, otherwise echo 400. Oops. And then close that. So this one is padding instead. Okay, so we can do that so that we have the same numbers over and over. So if you edit those numbers, they stay. So 300 like that, and then let's say 20 on this one. Okay, let me select a few files. Let's select a few more this time. I'm going to have, let's grab these. I don't actually have that many images, surprisingly. Let's generate. So at some point, if you select too many images, you're gonna have memory issues. Yeah, but there it is. Oh, the numbers do not stay, do they? Post padding. Oh, because when you refresh, actually those numbers are not there. Okay, what we can do is save them in the session instead, if you want, that is. So, but in that case, we need to do session start at the beginning here. And then close that. And then we save these guys into the session as well. So let's do session start here as well. And then at some point, oh, low battery, guys, but we are right at the end, so no worries. Let's do session target height is equal to target height, and then same thing, let's duplicate for padding. Same for padding here. Okay, great. So if now I do this, it should work wonders. Let me do 300 and let me do 20 here. And let me click on that. Just a few images for testing. And generate. Okay. So apparently the numbers do not add up. Oh, that doesn't work either. What's going on? So something isn't right here. The 50 is coming from here, I presume. Oh, look at that. I edited this by mistake, I guess. So it should be target height, like so. All right, so let's clean this up. Let me go here. All right, much cleaner. Okay. And we're in business. Now, the part where we check to see what file types are is this. Let me duplicate this. I'm going to say file types. And then we'll get this one from type, like so. Is it type or types? I'm not even sure anymore. Let me just die here. And let's just confirm. Let's do a print readable of files, images, something like this. Usually I want the pre-tags. It's much easier to see than stumbling in the dark. So let me put this back to something like 300. Let's grab even just a single image and generate. So let's see what it says. Type. Okay, so it's just type, and you can see this image JPEG there. So let's set allowed types to image JPEG. Sorry. And then there's image slash PNG. Those are the only allowed types. Now, sometimes these are in, I don't know if they are capitalized sometimes. I'm not sure, but let's see. File, files. Okay. So that one is inside, what was that? Type. Okay. So let me delete that. And this one is inside type. Yes. So as we loop through here, I'm just going to put a key over here. Like that. Just so we can use it in this context here. So this one, we can put two of these. We don't need this error thingy closing it like that. So here I can check to see if the type is good enough. So I'm going to say if in array. So we're checking for the needle. What are we checking for? It's inside file types. And we use this current key that we have over there, so that we grab whether it's the first or the second item, and the haystack is in allowed types. So if this thing is not in this array, meaning it's not allowed, then we do the continue here like that. Otherwise, then it's an allowed file type. So also, depending on the file type at that moment, let me just say, put an if statement here and say if this one is equal to image slash JPEG. This means we do the JPEG version. Let me do an else if statement file type is equal to, actually if it's not this one, then it's this one, because only those two are allowed, right? Unless you have more than that, you can, but still we can just add the else if like that. And then we can change these now. This one goes to image create from JPEG instead of from string. So here we provide the file name. We don't have to get the contents from it, just the actual file name. And let me do image create from PNG as well. Where is that one? There we go. Let's delete that like so. Okay, then we check if that's valid. Okay, so at least now we can limit our types to specific file types. So you can just add the file types over here, as many as you need, and then just use a different function for each one of those, because there's one for WebP. There's also WebP actually, which is quite popular now. So let me duplicate this. So there we go, WebP, image create from WebP. Yeah, I think there's one like that, so I'm gonna try that just to be sure that it actually works. Okay, so with that, but we are saving the final one to JPEG regardless. So great, that handles the file types. Let's go back to the index page. So let's give it a shot. Let me click here, and I want to find some WebP images here. So some PNG, some WebP. Not sure if I have any of those. Come on, come on, come on, come on. At least I have a PNG over here. So let's see, what's this one? Wow, these file names are quite long. Let me grab a PNG here, JPEG file. Let me find a WebP image. Wow, nothing, completely nothing. Oh, I thought I had quite a bit of images down here, but apparently not. There's also this JPEG version where it's .jpeg, so let's try that as well. You never know. It's good to test these things. And what else? Come on, WebP. Where are you? Wow, nothing, 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 nothing. Okay, what I'm gonna do is just download an image. For selected, let's generate. Okay, there we go. So those 3 images and then the 4th one here. So this is awesomeness. Let me try just download an image. Let's see here. Nice images from Google. Okay, so let's go images here. Let's just grab any few images I can get here. Let me grab this one. Okay, so hopefully this is a WebP image. Let me try and save this as. Yeah, WebP, look at that. Awesome. So let me go to images and save it here. Okay, so back to our collage, and let me select a few images here. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I don't even remember what what name I saved it as, so bear with me there. Okay, down here. That was pretty wild. So PNG images work, I have seen that, but WebP, goodness me, this is terrible because I can't seem to find the image that I just saved. Oh my goodness. Sorry about this, guys. Let me just go back and do a save as, then monitor the name. So that's nice. That's the first title. There we go. So WebP over there. Then let me select just a few other JPEGs to accompany it, and let's generate. Okay. So that one failed, apparently. So not workable. Let's see. Image create from WebP. There is WebP, PHP, WebP, PHP GD, image create from WebP. Let's see. Does it exist? Yes, it does. Image create from WebP. So what did I do wrong? I'm looking for the WebP. Oh my goodness, what did I just click? Let me just go there and copy the function. And you put the file name there. So it works exactly the same. But apparently, image WebP. Okay, in this situation, what I can do is, let's die over here again. We like to die, don't we? And let me show the files menu again. And then bear with me, guys. Sorry for extending this video, but sometimes it's important to be sure. So let me grab that image and let's see what's going on that's causing the problem. So I'm gonna click, and temp name is there, image WebP, so it should work. Image/WebP. Okay, so it should work. But let me grab this here. Let me go all the way down here. Let me see if images has anything in there. Oh, wait. Image/WebP, image/WebP. Okay, it should work. Let's resend. Okay, so it's actually working. So it seems to be working just fine. Okay, guys, so let me just test to see how it would look like once submitted. And there we go. So it's actually working. So I don't know why, for some reason, it didn't seem to work the first time. File not found. Okay. Okay, so let me grab some nice images for the final shot. And let's go here. Let's see what is good. Okay, so image collage coming up. So weird that I can't see the image that I'm trying to find here still, even though I can see it when I type its name. Okay, so because of the file types here. Oh my goodness, this is why. Sorry guys, so here I have to add it say image slash webp, like so. Okay, so finally, that was the issue. And there we go. Look at that nice collage. Very cool. Now, if I click browse, I should be able to see that image now because it's part of the list of allowed file types. So that goes to the, let's see, it starts with letter N, M, N, and there it is right there. That's a WebP image. All right, guys, hopefully you've learned something new. The code is in the link to the code is in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.